Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final edition of the Aces Loaded podcast for the 2021 baseball season. I'm Zack Bayrouty, the voice of the Aces. It was great to have you with us all year, both on the radio and on the podcast. If you're watching, you can see Greater Nevada Field behind me. You can also see that I'm wearing long sleeves. It's a little chilly today. There's definitely an autumn chill in the air as summer winds down, and we'll never forget the summer of 2021. Baseball came back. There were certainly a lot of challenges at the start of the season, but also a lot of challenges that were met and overcome. And the 2021 Reno Aces were a lot of fun to watch. On this edition of the pod, we'll talk with Cooper Hummel. What an interesting guy. Cooper was traded mid-season from the Milwaukee Brewers organization. You'll get to hear about how he spent 2 years in Japan as a youth learning baseball over in Japan from a Japanese perspective, which really impacted the way he plays the game today. Also, we'll talk with Josh Suchon. He's the voice of the Albuquerque Isotopes. He'll give us an inside look into Isotopes Park in Albuquerque and also tell us about the special connection between the city of Albuquerque and, of all things, the Simpsons. So stick around. We'll have Cooper Hummel coming up next on the Aces Loaded podcast.
Now to our other top story tonight, there will be no ace ball in 2020.
For the first time in the history of minor league baseball, an entire season has been canceled.
This news was expected given the current health crisis. This afternoon's announcement means that we'll not be playing ball this season along with the nearly 160 other minor league teams.
That ball is crushed. How about another 2-home run game?
2-2 on the way from Clark. Swung on and missed.
Walker belts one way out of here and gone. Oh, my goodness.
Swung on, fly ball into center, chasing Brito back. Socrates racing. He makes the catch.
The throw from Brito is right there, and they got it.
From downtown Reno, welcome back to Greater Nevada Field for another season of Reno Aces baseball. We are back on the Aces Loaded podcast. It's our player interview segment of the pod. I'm joined by Cooper Hummel. Aces, I don't know what to call you, catcher, utility player. We'll get into everything you do here in a little bit, but first and foremost, how you doing, and how has this crazy year been treating you?
I'm doing well, and it's like you said, it's a crazy year, so it's been good. Crazy's good. It means you're busy.
I'm gonna give you a shout out here first. We're in Albuquerque right now filming this, and yesterday he hit the 2-run homer with the Aces down to their final out to give Reno the lead and ultimately the win. It was in the top of the 9th inning. Take us through that home run and what you were looking to do there. Were you looking to go yard?
So Alec got on base with 2 outs, and Lawrence had gotten me the night before. Struck me at the end of the ball game, and I wasn't going to have that happen. So I was just kind of trying to look to put a ball in play. Alec runs well, so I knew if I hit a single, there's a chance he could score. Double, he definitely scores. I just told myself I was going to be early and catch a ball out front, and it just happened to go out. So that was pretty cool.
Did one better. That's one of a couple of memorable moments you've had here with Reno now. And it's going to be 46 games soon. It's going to be pretty much 50-50 split between your time in Reno, your time with Nashville, where you started the year. You got here via a trade, Eduardo Escobar deal in the middle of July. What was that like when you found out you were traded from the organization that had originally drafted you?
Yeah, it's actually surprising that I've already been here the same amount of time. That's crazy. Yeah, it was great.
It comes at you fast.
Yeah, it really does. It hits you hard. It was a wild time. I was sitting there playing cards with some teammates before a game. I was scheduled to play first base for the 6th day in a row, and that was kind of interesting because I haven't ever played first base in my life before that week. When you're the smallest guy on the field, it doesn't usually happen that way. But so I was in the lineup. I was just kind of relaxing playing cards, and I got called into the office. Coach tried to play it off as I was in trouble with something, and next second I was told I was going to Arizona. So that was pretty cool. Obviously a unique experience. I was kind of in shock at first, and when I walked out of the office, I don't think a lot of my teammates believed me. The week before, a teammate of mine and actually one of my best friends tried to play a prank on me, saying that he had gotten traded to the Orioles, and they kept going on and on and on. And he was sitting in the dugout that day. It was his off day, and I didn't really buy it. I figured he'd already be out of the locker room if he had actually gotten traded. But no one really believed me when I said I was traded to the Diamondbacks until someone checked Twitter. So it was pretty cool.
If you couldn't tell already, baseball is a culture of pranks. Like, even when you're going to the big leagues, when you get traded, it seems to never stop. That's just kind of clubhouse culture, and that's what makes it great. You had a huge moment with the Aces. Your second game with Reno in Sacramento, July 31st. Sutter Health Park. You needed a double for the cycle. You got a double. It was not the first time that you have toyed with a cycle. You did that in Carolina. You were a single away in 2017. But what was it like finally getting that cycle? And I'd imagine it was actually on your mind. And you could be honest about it. It was on your mind, right? When you're getting in the batter's box, you need a double?
Yeah, actually that in 2017, I had 2 chances. Later in the year, I was a triple shy and actually had the opportunity to get it. So the first time in Carolina, I actually didn't have the accurate number of at-bats to even try to get it. But yeah, no, it was pretty wild. My hitting coordinator from 2020 with the Brewers is the hitting coordinator with the Giants, and he was in town in Sacramento at the time. Nice. And I remember he was texting my hitting coach from 19, because he's also with the Giants now too. Yeah, going into that at bat, I was definitely thinking about it. If I hit a single, I was going to, no matter what. Yeah, definitely a cool experience. And I want to say it was like the 6th inning too, where I got it. So it was kind of cool to actually have, another opportunity if I wasn't actually going to get it in the 6th inning, but have a chance maybe in the 8th or the 9th to get it too. But yeah, it was pretty cool. Cool experience. Finally got the cycle, and definitely something I'll always remember, especially being an ace, right away.
I think it was the 3rd one I've called, and I remember going off the bat, I'm like, if this thing's fair, it's a cycle for sure, and it sliced it right down the line. It was a thing of beauty. Let's go back to your childhood. Lake Oswego, Oregon is where you were born and raised mostly. You had 2 years in Japan, which I didn't know until recently. Your dad worked over there for a couple of years, and you got exposed to Japanese baseball as a youth, which is way different than American baseball. But tell us a little bit about that experience and how it shaped you.
Oh man, living in Japan was great. I loved it. It was a great cultural experience for both me and my family. Both my parents had done homestays when they were in high school and in college. So they'd been over and they were really excited to go back. And I know both me and my sister loved being over there. When we were there, it was 2nd and 3rd grade, so a little bit different than if I was older, but nonetheless loved it. And yeah, the baseball experience definitely shaped kind of who I became as a baseball player, and focusing on the little things. Their practices are very intense. We practiced from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. We would turn double plays for an hour. You'd hit BP all afternoon. It was incredible, and it was so fundamental. Yeah, this was wild. And I'm like 9 years old or 8 years old at the time when I was doing this. Yeah, pretty cool experience. The team I played on was the minors team for the team that won the Little League World Series in 2003. So that was a cool experience. I got to be a part of the celebration for that fall. Even though I wasn't on the team, they brought everyone in. There were hundreds of people there, just celebrating this team and what their accomplishments. And I still have some memorabilia from that experience. Cool. Celebrating their accomplishments. Yeah, it was intense. I remember being the one of 2 Americans on the team. The other American, Bessie Knoll, played softball at Stanford, and she was actually on the USA women's baseball team. She was an incredible player. But yeah, we were the only 2 Americans. And I remember my first practice, I was in the outfield catching a fly ball, and as us Americans do, we catch a ball with one hand if we think we're pretty good, and they didn't really like that.
Nice
so
and slick, right?
I got called in pretty quickly and was told if I ever did that again, I'd be running. And I didn't do it for about 4 or 5 times, and sure enough, I caught one with one hand, and I was told to start going. Start a nice jog.
Do you catch? I mean, now you catch them with one hand, right?
Yeah, it seems more natural. You catch everything with 2 hands, you look a little stiff.
But does it ever creep into your mind like, man, I gotta catch this thing with 2 hands?
Every now and again, you make one bobble, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got to make sure I don't drop this next one.
I think Japanese culture on its own outside of baseball is fascinating in terms of what they value. But within baseball, it makes it even more fascinating to me because they don't like you to stand out. It's very much a team, a team feel with no part greater than the other. Does some of that still hang with you and resonate with you to this day?
Yeah, I mean, we're all here to win, and the team always comes first. In fact, Lolly was talking about it a couple weeks ago. When you're focused on helping your team win, your season's going to end up being positive, whether you know it or not. all the winning teams I've been on, and he even said the same thing. The teams he's coached or he's been on, when the player plays for the team, you end up being successful. And like you look at the numbers at the end of the year, and you're gonna be a better player. And I think that was one of the biggest turning points for this team in general. Like you look at our lineup, and I mean we're gross, but like when we really were focused on winning, everyone's numbers skyrocketed. It's pretty incredible how it happens that way. So yeah, that's definitely in my mind. I hate losing, so I think there is some of that too.
We're here with Cooper Hummel on the Aces Loaded podcast. Take us through your journey after being drafted by the Brewers. 16, you were drafted out of Portland and then went to Helena. And you skipped low A. You went right to high A, and you went to Carolina 2017 and 2018, the Carolina Mudcats. What was it like skipping into the high A level, repeating the level, and kind of finding yourself at that level? It's the high A level. I've spent 14 years there, and it can be really interesting, the development that goes on there.
Yeah, so 16 was definitely a weird year for me getting drafted. Obviously, it was very exciting, but pro baseball is very different than college, your first year in pro ball, there are certain guys that are going to play all the time, and there are certain guys, you're in a rotation. Sometimes, like we had 3 catchers, so we were in a rotation catching, and you may not play all the time. And sometimes, like for me, I tried to do way too much, and when I try to do too much, it doesn't go well statistically, and usually that means I'm not going to be in the lineup. So 16, if you look at it statistically, wasn't a positive year for me. Obviously, I did some cool things. I think I had more walks than strikeouts that year. Knew some zone control. But going into 17, I remember sitting in spring training going, oh my gosh, where am I going to be? Like, I'm not going to have a spot. And 2 days before the rosters were announced, Joe Aralt, my high A manager, ended up telling me that I was going to Carolina, which was sweet. I was so excited. But the catch was I was the 3rd catcher, and I wasn't active. So, having that be in the back of my mind kind of sucked. But at the same point, I wasn't going to be stuck in Arizona and extended, which was a positive. And I was going to get to be with, a team full of prospects. That team had, $15 to $25 million of value on the field every day.
And this is the Brewers coming in their own as we know them now. This is like the genesis of that really good Brewers team. Yeah,
we had Corbin Burns, Freddie Peralta, Marcos Duplan. Our outfield was Corey Ray, Trent Grisham, who's a Gold Glover. We had Jake Gatewood. We had Isan Diaz. He's in the big league with the Marlins. Monte Harrison. There's 10-plus big leaguers on that team. Cody Ponce. So it was a really good experience in that regard, and I definitely grew through the times when I wasn't active. And then about 40 games into the year, I got activated, and actually that was the game you were referring to with that almost cycle. First game I got in Carolina, I was a single shy of the cycle, and was in the lineup the next day again, hit a few balls hard, and got lucky and I obviously lucky for my career and myself, and awful for him, but one of our other catchers ended up getting hurt, and I ended up staying in Carolina for the rest of the year. Ended up having a pretty good and successful season because of that, and it kind of springboarded the career I've had, which was pretty cool.
When you're a guy that has to fight for ABs and fight for some playing time, does that give you a certain edge that you hold on to?
Yeah, you and I have joked about it before. You look on the field, and I'm not the biggest. I might be the shortest on the field, but I'm definitely not always the smallest.
Hit some tanks though.
Yeah, no, I can swing it okay and hit a ball pretty decently far sometimes. But I'm not the skinniest. I can run okay, but I've always been. Before college was always the smallest on the field. There's no doubt about it. I've filled out a little bit since then, so maybe I'm not the smallest, but definitely, probably the shortest on the field. I've always had that chip on my shoulder. I've had a lot of people tell me, you can't, you won't, you're not going to be able to do it. I had my JV coach in high school, freshman year, told me, Coop, you will not amount to anything in baseball. You will not play professionally.
Your JV coach told you that.
JV coach. I ended up transferring the next year and ended up doing pretty well for myself. I also had a college coach tell me that I wasn't big enough to play at the Division I level. So I've had a lot of chips on my shoulder. So being the guy to have to claw and fight and try to get those at-bats, it's not really anything new. So just to add one more thing to the list is pretty cool. So.
You hit 17 home runs in 19 with Biloxi. That was a career high for you. You have 6 here in Reno. Has the power been a part of your game that's progressed, or have you always had it?
It was actually funny. I was joking with Alec Thomas yesterday. I didn't really hit home runs in high school. He was laughing about how he's not the biggest guy on the field either. He's like, yeah, I hit 10 in high school, like my senior year. I'm like, dude, I hit 3. So no, like the power hasn't always been there. Like I can put them out. Like I can do it. I think that I have been able to use the power more as I've developed and gone through my career. Definitely early in my career, I was more focused. Okay, we're just gonna hit line drives. I'm not gonna try to do too much. And I think when I really figured out how to keep doing that on a consistent basis, I was able to not miss that pitch that I really wanted to do damage on. Whereas early in my career, I would get that pitch and I'd get really excited. I'd see it and I'd try to do too much. And now I'm getting to the point where I can just kind of, I joke, flick the ball around the yard and it'll go because I'm putting the right swing on it. In 19 that was pretty cool. I think I more than doubled my career high in 19, and then this year I'm 5 away from that. So in a shortened season, and yeah, it's been pretty cool. So it's just kind of been developing over time.
I think part of that maybe residual effect is you have more walks than strikeouts, which tells me your strike zone judgment is really good, and you really have the keen ability to now find that pitch that you really want to get. Would you say that's a fair assessment as far as your strike zone judgment and how it's come along?
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like I've always had a pretty good eye at the plate. Obviously, as you move up levels, umpires get better too. You're not going to get the ball that's a ball off called as much at the AAA level, so that's definitely helped me this year. But yeah, just trying to stick to my spot in the zone that I'm really looking for, that at bat. Like at this point, I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to get pitch-wise or how someone might pitch me, so I know if I'm looking in a certain location and just stay there, I'm going to get that pitch at least once in at bat. And if I get it, I can't miss it.
There's obviously value to being able to play everywhere, right? At the big league level, it makes you, your versatility makes you easier to bring up and put anywhere and play. How much do you love catching?
Oh, I love it. It's my favorite. There's nothing really quite like it. Like you're on the field and you're in every play, you're every pitch. People say you're the captain of the field sometimes. Like, I don't really love that term. I just think that you're in it. You're the captain of the field. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, you're in every play. You're trying to move people around. You're kind of like a second coach in some points. But at the same point, it's just being in every play, being active, knowing what's going on. Sometimes your juices are flowing all the time, and I think that's what really gets me going. First base is cool, third base is cool. I really enjoy those as well, and those are fun experiences for me because those are more frequent now, and like I kind of get excited to play there. Left field, sometimes you unfortunately check out sometimes, and I don't mean to say that in a negative way, but like, a guy gets walked, and all of a sudden for the next 3 pitches, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, well, like, what's going on here? Yeah. Whereas, like, being behind the plate, you're like, hey, like, we got to lock it back in. Like, we got to figure it out. And, like, left field, I have no way to help.
I feel like if you had to lock in or tried to lock in left field the same way with every pitch you try to lock in behind the plate, it would just be exhausting. Like, you can't do it. You need to kind of mellow out. Yeah. If you're playing a non-catching position. Yeah,
totally. And obviously you're still in the game and you're trying to get your right reads, and if someone takes a swing, you need to be ready to go. Mm-hmm. But there definitely is like a mental state that you have behind the plate that you don't have at another position.
How's your time been in Reno so far, just personally?
It's been good. Yeah, I love the team. Guys are great. I haven't really been able to get out much. I don't have my car, so my mode of transportation only gets me so far. And
the Rolls Royce.
Yeah, the Rolls Royce. Yeah, and when the soles of my shoes are barking, I don't really want to go too far. And the smoke's been kind of rough, so keeping it between the Silver Legacy, the Starbucks down the road, and the field usually. So.
It's a good place to keep it. Any goals the rest of the year and then going into the fall?
We got 6 games left, including today. Just gonna continue to try to put together good at bats. I'm not sure we're necessarily in it for the last few games with this whole 10-game stretch thing. When you got Nashville and Durham, both are 5-0. We're just trying to put together some good games and, hopefully win the next 6, which would be pretty sweet. Trying to put together some good at-bats and just enjoy my time here. And going into the fall, I'm, excited to catch a little bit more of the fall league and be ready to go.
You want to manage someday?
I don't know. I don't know. It'd be cool. I don't know if I'd want to at a minor league level. Maybe a collegiate level or a big league level would be pretty cool. I love hitting, so maybe a hitting coach or hitting coordinator job, that'd be kind of cool.
You'd be good, man. Get to the big leagues first, though.
That'd be awesome. Thanks.
Cooper, thanks, man. Always great talking to you, and good luck the rest of the way, the short time we have, and then into the off season, man. Keep getting after it.
Really appreciate it. Thanks.
That's Cooper Hummel. We're back with more next on the Aces Loaded podcast.
Let's go, Mom.
We're back on the Aces Loaded podcast. It's our Zach on the Road segment presented by My Ride to Work. I'm joined by the voice of the Isotopes, a good friend of mine too, Josh Suchon. How are you, man?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
I meant to introduce Bart Simpson as well. Bart is hanging upside down in one of four, right? Simpsons characters that have statues here. We're going to talk about the Simpsons Connection in a moment, but it's my first time to Isotopes Park, and I'm experiencing it obviously for the first time, and you give me a little bit of history in regards to when the ballpark was opened in 2003 and what preceded it. But I got to say, I love the yard. I feel like they did everything right when they built this ballpark, now it being, 18 years old. Do you get that sense now coming here every day?
I give a lot of tours to people, and one of my favorite things to ask people is, when do you think the ballpark was opened? And a lot of people say, 5 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. And I go, no, the ballpark opened in 2003. And I think it's a credit to the city of Albuquerque, the Isotopes staff, that they keep it clean. They don't take anything for granted. It gets power scrubbed on a regular basis. Every seat gets cleaned before every single game. And there's constantly work being done in the off season to add new things and make sure that there's new paint jobs so that it doesn't look like it's old. Because you and I both know, we've been to some ballparks and they start to look old after 6 or 7 years sometimes. They start to really look old after 12. And I'm really proud that, it's now 20 years, 18 seasons, and, the place doesn't look brand new, but it still looks really spotless.
So the Isotopes were born in 2003. There was not by any stretch when baseball history began here in Albuquerque. The Dukes preceded the Isotopes. Can you take us inside the history and then the layoff between the old ballpark being closed and the franchise moving and this ballpark being open?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different versions of the Dukes from over the years. The first version was way back in 1915, and I'm not going to tell every single version of it because most people just know of the Dukes as the Dodgers AAA team. There was actually a Dodgers AA team here for a while that was called the Dukes, and then they were called the Albuquerque Dodgers. But for most people, it began in 1972 with the Albuquerque Dukes as a AAA team, and the ballpark that is on this exact same location was called the Albuquerque Sports Stadium, and that was the best of its kind AAA. In fact, there was an exhibition game that was played here. Willie Mays was the first batter, and Willie Mays himself said, "This is the best minor league ballpark I've ever seen in my life." But then over time, it did not get taken care of the way that Isotopes Park gets taken care of. It got older, it got much older, and then it got really old. And at the end of the 2000 season, the team was sold, it was moved to Portland, and there was no baseball here for 2 years. And there was no immediate plans to bring baseball back for 2 years, but there was a lot of people in minor league baseball in the city of Albuquerque, the state of New Mexico, and a lot of business owners who thought, our summers are not the same without baseball here. And so they were able to work, and they got they put a measure out on the ballot, which the voters approved, that was basically to renovate the old ballpark. It was called a renovation, but in reality, it was a brand new ballpark starting from scratch. And Ken Young bought a team that was in Calgary, brought the team to Albuquerque, and it started in 2003 with a much different name.
I love the Isotopes name. I love the ballpark. First and foremost, because when you look at it from the outside, there's the stained glass windows, and this is such a colorful place. I mean, they talk about the red and green chilies and the land of enchantment, but I love the purple and yellow stained glass windows. I feel like they did a nice job kind of bringing the vibe here to life, just with the way the ballpark looks.
Yeah, they really wanted to be a ballpark that looks and feels like New Mexico. And so, like you mentioned, the stained glass, I'm glad you like that touch. Even having a hill in center field. There used to be a hill at the ballpark in Houston in the major leagues. That's gone. We're the only ballpark that has a hill. It's kind of silly, but it's also really cool that there's a hill in center field. It
leads some great calls for you, too.
It absolutely does. Yeah, and so they just really understood that wanted a ballpark that was going to fit New Mexico, and they did that.
All right, let's wrap it up with the Simpsons connection here. The Simpsons are a big part of what's here in the concourse, because in 1990, it was season 2. It was an episode called I think it was Homer Dance or whatever. Homer becomes a mascot of the Springfield Isotopes, Mr. Burns' power plant team, and he's got this huge run as the guy that's the mascot for this team. And so the Simpsons kind of became synonymous with the Isotopes. The episode was written by Ken Levine, who you actually had a chance to work with for a while. Tell us a little bit about the Simpsons connection with the Isotopes, and then being able to work with Ken Levine and kind of coming full circle, just you personally with the Simpsons here in Albuquerque.
So Ken's one of the most successful TV writers of all time. He wrote Mary Tyler Moore and MASH and Cheers and so many others. His IMDb page is ridiculous. And he decided that he wanted to become a baseball play-by-play announcer, one of the most famous TV screenwriters of all time. And so he spent 2 years working games for free himself into a recorder at Dodger Stadium, getting practice. And then he sent his tape off, because this was the 80s, sent his tape off. He worked in minor league baseball in the International League for Syracuse and Tidewater. And at the end of the first season, The Simpsons was a new show. They came to him and his writing partner and said, hey, what do you think about writing an episode of The Simpsons that's about minor league baseball based on your experience? So he wrote it, and it was a huge hit, and that was the first time that you heard the word Isotopes. But then it was still a long time before you heard Isotopes again. And in the second time that you heard it, that's when Homer discovered all of this Albuquerque Isotopes pennants and shirts and hats, and he realized that his beloved team was going to be moved from Springfield to Albuquerque. So Homer goes on a hunger strike, and he tries to raise awareness to make sure that this does not happen. And on TV, Homer saves the day. He's the hero. The Springfield Isotopes do not move to Albuquerque. They stay in Springfield. Well, in real life, that was around the time that the Calgary team was purchased and moved here to Albuquerque, and so there became, what's going to be the name? Should it be the Dukes or should it be something new? There was actually a survey in the newspaper. It was an afternoon newspaper, to let you know how long ago this was, that there was an afternoon newspaper at the time.
Second edition, baby.
And so Roadrunners was an item, atoms, protons, neutrons, and isotopes. And well, that episode of the Isotopes of The Simpsons happened to air within about 2 to 3 months of that vote taking place. So all of it came together. Isotopes was chosen. It's been a huge hit. And the other thing you have to remember is that this was 2002 when this vote was made. That's before we had sod poodles and chihuahuas and all of these more crazy names. Back then, the names were traditional, like aces. And so it really ushered in an era of unique, outrageous nicknames, and nowadays Isotopes doesn't even seem all that outrageous, but it was in 2003, and now we've gone crazy with nicknames.
You know what you would have told someone if they thought the Isotopes name was too crazy?
I'm sure you're setting me up for the perfect punchline, and I missed it. All I could think of was, don't
have a cow, man. By the way, Josh Suchon, one of the most talented dudes ever, also a writer turned play-by-play broadcaster. He's written a bunch of books and has covered Major League Baseball for major dailies. I really admire your work, Josh. Thanks for the virtual tour here of Isotopes Park, and thanks, Bart. Appreciate hanging out, man.
Thank you. I love Reno. My mom's in Reno. I love Reno. I spent some time there. It's good to be with you.
First time you've done an interview with a statue hanging upside down?
Upside down, yes. Me and Ken did an interview by the Homer statue, which was pretty awesome, too.
So for the record, the Homer statue is right in the middle of the bench. I thought it was going to be difficult to kind of do this.
And the lighting's also terrible because it's backlit, but I like to tell people on the tours that the Homer Simpson statue is the most photographed place in Albuquerque. It's not, but we tell them that anyways.
It's a little white lie. Josh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Have a great finish to the year.
Thank you. You too.
This has been the Zach on the Road segment of the Aces Loaded podcast, presented by My Ride to Work. We're back to wrap up the Aces Loaded podcast after this. as we close out the Aces Loaded podcast, my thanks to Cooper Hummel and Josh Suchon for joining me on this edition. Also, a special thanks to Chase Grodin for producing and editing these podcasts all season long. It's been so great getting to know you in 2021, and cheers to 2022. I'm Zack Bayrouty. We'll see you next time on the Aces Loaded podcast.